Again, I'm a real pro in forgetting to press that button. So happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Agile Community Meetup of November. You are seeing a lot of faces on our end. So we have an internal meeting which is happening today, which is called Agile Fight Club. You see it in front of us with one of the biggest Toblerone rows I've ever seen, brought by a Swiss colleague called Reto Weber. And we are talking extremely technical content together with our dev and pre-sales and customer experience folks. So that's the reason why we are all meeting together in Bremen. And today we are delighted to have Douglas DeCamp and Jeremy Green with us, two extremely technical and I would say agile technical evangelists in their corresponding roles, one in pre-sales, one in CX. But before having me telling too much about you guys, would you like to tell us a little bit more about you?
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually start sharing our screen here. And we're going to go with.
So maybe just one last thing I forgot to mention before handing over to you, Douglas. Guys, if you have questions, it would be extremely helpful if you would use the Q&A section of Zoom and not the chat. I mean, you can ask questions in the chat, but we'll try to follow up questions after the session, maybe. So it would be great if you could ask there. And if it's something important, just drop me a message and I'm happy to take over the question after the session. Okay, from there on, I would say the stage is yours, guys. We are listening.
All right. So Douglas DeCamp, I've been with IGEL for a little over 8 years. Came to IGEL, from one of the largest healthcare companies in the state of Michigan. I helped bring IGEL there, and loved it so much I decided to go to work for IGEL. Prior to that, I've got a plethora of experience, mostly in healthcare on the EUC side. And real quick fun fact: I was Jeremy Green's SE. So I like to say that he enjoyed working with me so much that he also wanted to come to IGEL just to work with me. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yep. So I'm Jeremy Green. I was a systems administrator for about 10 years before coming to IGEL. So my background's in a lot of virtualization, VMware, SECM, just general Windows administration, stuff like that. And then as part of that, I was an IGEL administrator for about 4 to 5 of those years. And then, like Douglas mentioned, he was my original SE when I got into IGEL. I found IGEL from actually a Citrix user group that he came and did a presentation at. So that was kind of cool that, now we're working together. But I've been at IGEL for about 2 years as a technical relationship manager. So I get to, work with customers and do a lot of technical stuff and have fun, solve problems. So.
A little bit about what we're going to go over today. So we're going to, as I stated, from light to zero touch. So we're going to, start just using our the OS creator. It's been around forever. Continues to work. But there's a little trick to this one, which also makes it unattended. It comes to one of our IGEL community heroes, Ron Nair. He created this the script and complete buildable. There's going to be a link to the to exactly where you can download that, build it, and do it yourself. And then Jeremy's going to talk about using UMS as a Pixie, the Microsoft MDT. I'm going to go over SECM, and then Jeremy and I will also talk about kind of together automatic device registration and some default directory roles. That is going to take you all the way through for that full zero touch. You're going to deploy. It's going to be discovered. It's going to be found. It's going to grab its license. It's going to grab its proper directory, pull down its configuration, reboot, and away you go. So for that true zero touch, once you get everything set up and done. So with the unattended, if you grab this link from the community GitHub, it will allow you to go ahead and do everything that you need, to make a quick little nice, completely unattended. This is some of the places, where I hear this being used. One we work with a company who manufactures beverages of different sorts throughout the world, and they have some very remote locations initially tested in some very remote locations in Canada. And they had devices they needed to update and deploy, which were not a lot of internet access, not a lot of bandwidth. It's just simply not available. So what they do is they have an unattended OS stick, where they go. Some of these are actually on forklifts, and others are on production lines. They put it in, they boot it, and then from there they have their device registration and automatic discovery set up, and away it goes. So it can definitely be used in a production or productive situation, but it's also really good and nice for testing. Want to plug it in, use it on a virtual machine, and away you go. And that's what we're going to show right here. So as we go and we'll see, this is just passing through the USB. It's going into this is going into VMware Workstation. Also works with, I've done this with KVM, VirtualBox, VMware Workstation, and Hyper-V. Works on all of them. With Hyper-V, you just got to really make sure, watch what your NIC settings are, and go with at least version 12.3.2 or higher if you're going to do it with Hyper-V. So the cool thing is that you'll see, I'm not going to play it all the way through, but you'll see that during the question and answer scenario, there's no clicking, there's no touching, there's nothing that's going on. So they boot from USB, and it's going to go ahead. It's going to install. It's going to answer all your questions, and just this way, you can enjoy, drink coffee, talk with the person who's at that station, or if you're doing it in your lab, you can be working on something that's a little bit more fun and challenging. And so versus installing an operating system. So we'll take mouse staying in the exact same place, and we're just going to go ahead, and it's going to go through. It's going to do its thing. So it's really cool. Automatically builds, it automatically downloads. It's an extremely good script. So if you see Ron Nair on the IGEL community, give him a big shout out and say thank you for this. So you guys get the idea. So now we'll let Jeremy talk about some of the cooler things that you might actually be doing in production at scale.
Yeah, so the first one here is going to be UMS with Pixie. So this is an official IGEL method that's kind of posted on our KB. There's a link there to the KB article, and then you'll see a video on this in a second. It's a little bit more scalable than USB, just because you can Pixie boot a bunch of devices at once, and once a device is kicked off into Pixie, it is zero touch. You don't have to do anything after that. For OS 12, this does require internet access, because this actually goes out to download the ISO file from, or download the OS from the app portal. And there's a lot of moving parts here. So you have to set up a DHCP server, a TFTP server, a web server, and then you have to get the UMS JSON file from the web UMS console. And then this is a short little video that we can watch. Just kind of goes through the process. So here's the article. There's quite a few steps. So just showing what we're downloading, what's in there. So there's a TFTP and a web server folder, and those are the contents. So first we have to set up the DHCP server. You can set up different vendor classes, so you can have different boot files for UEFI versus legacy BIOS. In my example here, I think I just do an EFI option to make it simple for demonstration purposes. And then we have to set up a TFTP server. So in our KB article, it goes through using the SolarWinds TFTP server. So that's what I did here as well. Inside the TFTP root folder, we copy that grub folder from the download. And then the Pixie config is something we actually get from our UMS console. So inside that Pixie config, we just have to update some of the URLs to match the server that we're pointing to. And then on our web server, we just have to change the MIME types for those file extensions. So there's 3 file extensions that we just have to flip to application octet stream. And then those 3 files are what we're going to drop into our web server directory. So now here we're Pixie booting a device, and then you'll just see the process go through. And then after a reboot, it was auto-detected because I had automatic registration and DNS set up. And that's it. Device has been converted to OS 12. Okay, so moving on to MDT. So this is going to be very similar to an SECM type conversion. It's going to use a task sequence. It's just not quite the same as SECM because we don't have a plugin that kind of sets it all up for you. So it's a little bit manual to configure this yourself. Again, it's a lot more scalable than USB. MDT also requires Pixie. So you will have to Pixie boot your devices. But if you don't have SECM because it's expensive, WDS and MDT infrastructure is typically free with your Windows Server licensing. And it's pretty simple to set up. There's not a lot of moving parts if you already have the infrastructure in place. There is no KB article for this because it's not kind of officially supported by IGEL, but it works the same as the SECM.
Yeah, Ahmed, you have your hand raised?
Maybe just a
Do we want to take the question?
Yeah,
now,
it's a quick question maybe because it fits very well at the moment. A question from Lucrezia: what is your favorite method to use? Is there any preference on your side, guys?
Me, I prefer using SCCM with with the standard boot media, not using the one from the tool. Personally, and that's just me. That's because that's where my comfort level's at. That's what I did for years, for almost 2 decades. What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I was an SCCM administrator for 5 years or more actually. So I have a lot of comfort level there too, but I acknowledge that different options can be best in different scenarios. So there is no one size fits all for conversion, and we'll kind of try to touch on like the pros and cons of each method as we go through it. But there's definitely situations where they all excel.
Yeah.
Thank you both. So would you be open to 2 additional questions around PXE?
Yeah.
Then Ahmed is asking, can you do onboarding following the PXE boot process?
Yes. So if you have automatic device registration, so this is if it's internal. Now, if you're doing like boot to cloud, like Pixie boot, to say like an external repository, cloud hosted repository, again, with Intune or something like that, it will deploy the operating system, but you'll have to manually run through the onboarding by putting in your username and password. If it's on-prem and it can talk to the UMS server, there's nothing else that's needed after Pixie boot, provided you have everything set up for automatic device registration and your default directory roles configured. So I guess
if it's if it's external, you don't get the full onboarding automation because you're just going to get the first launch wizard where you have to type in either like your email address if you have OBS set up, or you can type in your ICG or reverse proxy address to get registered externally. But typically, Pixie isn't really used externally. That's pretty rare.
Yeah, I've only seen one customer do it. Booting to a cloud distribution point. It was only for a handful of devices. So most of the time, it's you're using the SCCM client or you're Pixie booting with MDT, SCCM, or UMS.
Great, thank you. Last question from Stefan. Is it possible to go around the internet requirement for PXE?
Going around the internet requirement, I would say use a different method. The UMS with Pixie is not the most elegant solution, and pretty much everything else on this list would be better.
Great, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
So now in this video, we're going through the MDT installation process. So just kind of showing it's a standard, WDS MDT install, not much going on here. We just have a task sequence that we created. Everything else as far as the boot images, it's all default. So if we look here, inside our deployment share, there's no way because IGEL is not a WIM file, so we cannot directly import the OS. What I did in this case is I just created a folder within the deployment share called IGEL, and that's where we get all of these files. So these files is everything that's included in the SECM package. So I just kind of pulled it out of that SECM installer. So then if we look at the task sequence here, anybody who's familiar with SECM or that deployment method would see that it's pretty much the same set of steps. The cool thing about MDT is there's no need to inject anything into the boot WIM, because when MDT mounts, or when you boot to it, it automatically mounts a Z drive as your deployment share on the MDT server. So you can just have files in that share and they'll be accessible from WinPE.
You can do the same with SECM.
Is it at the end of the video? I think
That's
so.
the end of the video. Sorry. Okay. All right. So SCCM with the IGEL plugin. This is for me personally, it's my favorite. I've been a fan of SCCM Mecum, for a long time, And the reason I like this is because it gives you a lot of flexibility. If you're going to do it exactly as our KB states and using our tool, using the boot media, really, I mean, it's click next administration. It really it's that easy. So you download it, you run the executable, test it, and it's going to go. Here's the one catch is that everything for IGEL will need to run, from that new boot media. This means you're going to have to be, very careful with the boot media that you're using and deploying. You can't use that boot media for your existing task sequences. You can't use the existing task sequence boot media with the new IGEL task sequences. And this can, this can cause problems as it comes across. Just the way the just history will show, again and again. It can get complicated. Also, unless you go through and you do some changes, there is a limit on the size, of the boot media. So even if you run everything from the boot media, including putting the package, that's in there, based on so if you inject it and decide to use it your own, take our stuff, put it into your existing, just note that can also become problematic. So there's ways around that, and we're going to go over these. So using our plugin, I just want to show you exactly how simple it is and what happens, when you're done. You'll see we have the standard x64. You're going to put in your site code, give it some credentials, and away we go. What account are we going to use? And then just make sure you note that path. You'll see what happens when we go in there. And that's also where you're going to put all your new incoming. So if you ever need to update, new version of the operating system comes out, you don't want to be deploying the old one anymore, go in, you can take a look, and you'll see that you just put them there. You can run the tool afterwards, to go ahead and update everything. Makes it really nice and easy. So we've got our minimal.bin. Now if we go, we've got our task sequences, they're already in place. We've got our new boot media. Everything's good. We'll see, exactly, what's happening and how it's going. So are we using the SECM client, or are we doing a Pixie boot? Also with with one quick change, you can do everything all in one. We'll show that later. So that way you can do everything from one task sequence, no matter what. So. And same thing as like Jeremy was showing earlier as well. The location of those, all the files, that it installs. C program files, x86, IGEL, SECM. If you go in there, everything's in a neat little zip file. You can just copy, extract that. And if you want to use those as packages, you can go ahead, you can import those files as packages. And so if you like doing it that way, and that's your standard and approved method, so you can put it all there, or you can copy it all to a share, run it from a network drive, map it, to Z drive, T drive, whatever it is that you want. And you can use the exact same way that Jeremy was showing earlier. So very, very flexible. The tool gives you a lot of great things. But the cool thing is that when it's done, you're ready to go. You can just test in a way. You can take that task sequence and you can apply it to a collection, and test it. Does the SECM client, does it find it? Does it grab it? Does it convert? Test away. You can do a Pixie as long as you got your IP address out there on your test subnet. Do a Pixie boot. It's going to work. Now, without using everything from the IGEL plugin. So creating your own task sequences using your existing boot media. Most of the time, very large enterprises, this is the way that it's going to go. They have their boot media has been refined, over a very long course. They've tested it, with all their hardware. They have all their, the necessary network drivers, storage drivers. Everything's there. It's very refined. And most of the time, what I suggest doing is just running DD from the boot media. Go ahead, grab that existing boot media, inject DD into it, re-import it, put the rest of the stuff on a network drive. You can even put the other utilities in there if you want. might get a little bit more complicated with change controls, but ultimately take the bin file that you're going to deploy, the latest and greatest IGEL bin file, put it on a share someplace, a DFS share, add it to the distribution points, call it, from a location that's highly available, and you're going to have the exact same luck, that you do if you just use everything, from the supplied IGEL boot media. So, Adaptiva and Nomad, we've also used they give you some really nice URLs that go out, to the locations. You can use that as your repository as well. It also goes ahead and distributes it, everything out there, makes it widely available, really brings that speed down. So, I mean, if you want to see an operating system deploy in about 5 minutes, it's a great way to do it. So if they're already having an investment, things like that, it works. Definitely not supported, but it works. Try it first. So again, what I like to do, I download, I download the tool, I install it into my environment. I am going to, extract it, put the utilities onto a network share. I inject DD into the original boot media, just using a couple DISM commands. Away you go. I've also taken all the other utilities, and I've created them as packages, so you can call packages and go that way. That also works. That also works great. It's very, very flexible. This is why I like tools like SECM and MDT, because it gives you the ability to adapt, to the network that you're in. So, and again, this isn't, not fully supported, but it works. I've done this many different ways with many different customers. I also have a script. So what I do is I use the Modern Desktop Deployment Toolkit for Office 365. Download it. You got to run it every 90 to 180 days, depends on how long they give you. But you can download the whole thing. It puts it into a ZPack file. Throw it into a Hyper-V environment, and then I have a script that's going to take this. You just have set up a folder structure. You can create it however you want. It's going to take all those packages. It's going to automatically, take the task sequences, that I've built, I've used before. It's going to re-import them. It's going to use the 80K boot WIM that's there. It's going to inject DD into it. It's going to create the network share, and it just makes it nice and easy, because my test environment, I have to do this over and over again. So it's not something that I want to actually do by hand and take 6 to 8 hours every 90 to 180 days, to do it. So instead, I have I worked with my friend Mike Heiser. He is a very gifted in PowerShell. We went through and we worked this out over a period of time, and I've been using this and kind of refining it over the years. So we can just kind of take a look, and you're going to see it just using some different folders. And what's going to happen is it's going to inject DD into the existing boot media. It's going to create packages, with those things, and it's going to import different types of task sequences that I've used. So whether it's going from a network share, from boot media, everything from packages, or everything pulled down locally to the SECM cache on the client. So lots of different options and ways to go. Pretty much just showing you the functions and stuff that are in here. I've added over time, we've added more and more error handling in as I've run into problems. If you have to run it repeatedly, sometimes the DISM command, it doesn't clear out the cache. So if it errors based on the error, it'll go ahead, it'll clear it out and put it. So maybe you didn't have something in the proper folder, so things aired out, but your boot media is still in the mount directory. So, and based on the error, it'll actually go ahead, it'll clean it, it'll still unmount it, and it'll run. So after it's done, this is what you get. So and everything was actually you'll see it's gonna run, it's gonna import, and the way it's gonna go. So here they are. They're now into, we took the tools, that are available to plug in. We put them in as packages. We've got, you'll see that we have a new boot media, IGEL test v2. So you can call it, iterate it, however you like. We've got a bunch of different, new task sequences, that are in here. And so for doing it three different ways. So. And you can do that with PowerShell or whatever, whichever way you prefer doing it, but it's very flexible, gives you many options, to go through. The next one we'll see where it's going to actually have, some errors, and we're going to, grab it because the package numbers are going to be different. But you can also take all those and put it into one single package too, just so you know. I recently tried that and it works. And it's only, I think it's around 180K. So super small, really easy. So it's not gonna take a bunch of bandwidth or anything along those lines. There you go. So just kind of shows extremely flexible and the ways to go about doing it. Now if I can slide to advance. There you go. So now if you want to just put everything into one, great way to do it. Use your conditions. Again, there's many different conditions that you can also use here. They're already built into the tool. So, but the main one is if you want to put everything into one task sequence, whether you're going to use the SECM client or you want to use Pixie, which steps am I going to run? Take a look. Are we in PE? True or false? So that'll be your deciding factor. You can do everything in one task sequence. Makes it great. Also, if you want, you can set this up, for different types of collections as well, and do your readiness checks, based on that. Maybe if you're just going to use use IGEL for digital signage, you can take that memory requirement and put it down to 2 gig. But if you're going to be doing multimedia, you want to make sure that if we're deploying this, it's going to be 8 gig. Processor speeds. So what do we basically what do we want and what's going to meet our needs? Those things are already there. So you're not, this way you can set these up so you're not disappointed with the end results. So now, taking it, so we've got the operating system installed. Jeremy's going to, run you through the rest, what happens here in order to make it completely usable for the, for the end user. So as you see.
Before we jump in, I think there's a couple quick SECM questions in the Q&A. Andrew had one about the IGEL WIM. So Pixie, when you have the IGEL WIM file, in the IGEL bin file inside of the WIM file that you're booting to, if you're not using the minimal, it can take a really long time because that's multiple gigabytes. Pixie isn't a super efficient file transfer protocol, or TFTP isn't. So to get around that, you can look at using the minimal bin, which will shave down a little bit of size. Alternatively, if you look when you install the SECM plugin, you get 3 different task sequences. You get the create over net, and the in-place upgrade. So the create over net, you can actually use without having an IGEL bin file in your boot image. And then you'll actually point the task sequence to like a network share to grab that bin file. And then you're not downloading that during Pixie. It comes through WinPE, and it's usually quite a bit faster.
One of the great things with OS 12, so with OS 11, there's a huge discrepancy in the file between the minimal bin and the deployed bin. With OS 12, it's less than 100 meg difference. So, so just so you know, it's we've definitely gotten better.
Yeah, if you're doing the create over net now, Andrew, you don't actually need the bin file in your boot WIM at all. So there's options in the SECM image manager tool to actually remove the bin file. And then you'll have a much smaller boot image.
Good questions. Thank you.
All right. So back to the device registration. So in order for automatic device registration to work on-prem, it's going to look for a DNS record called IGEL RM server. You basically want that to match your UMS IP address. So we're going to create an A record for that. If you have 2 UMS servers, you would just create 2 A records for IGEL RM server, and they would function as like a DNS round robin. And then in addition to DNS, we'll also enable the automatic registration checkbox within UMS that will allow it to accept an automatic registration request. If you want to have a naming convention, it will automatically name new devices as they come in according to your naming convention. And then lastly, we need to enable automatic license deployment. So you can see that over on the right side. It's also recommended to enable automatic license exchange. So that's going to help if for some reason you say coterm your license packs and the product pack IDs change. When a device license expires, that'll allow the device to grab a new license from a different pack than it had originally. So
now and next.
An alternative to automatic registration is if you pre-import devices. So we have a couple ways to do this. Primarily, it's going to be like a CSV import into UMS. You can do short format, long format. It can come in handy if you want to also pre-populate a bunch of other information fields like cost center, departments, comments, things like that. But it is, you know, a bit of manual effort to fill that stuff out and get that CSV imported.
This is great in healthcare. If you need it, you know, first shot right away, the device name has got to be exactly what it, you know, what it was in order to continue working with your EMR, EHR. So, or you can also use the API. Default directory roles. This is where the real magic happens. Do you want this one or you want me to take it?
You can grab it if you want.
All right. So with default directory roles, what we're doing now is, so as you saw, we've deployed the operating system, and you know, we've done that, you know, from light touch, you know, to zero touch, you know, on the deployment. Now we've also automatically, we've found the device, we've brought it into the UMS, you know, we've given it a license. But now we need to really give the device a home. Where does it, you know, where does it need to be so that it's going to be, you know, so it's going to be fully functional, you know, for our end user. So if they're, you know, working at the automotive store and it's at the, it's at the parts counter, they need to be able to look up parts, you know, right away. They don't want to wait for somebody to apply profiles, you know, for it or something along those lines. So let's, you know, create some directory rules and have it go to where it needs to be right from the get-go without us having to do a thing. And this is the way to do it. Create a new default directory role. We give you a lot of options as to what do we want to use to do this. Some of the most common ones are going to be structure tags. And the reason why is because it's going to be assigned, you know, from the subnet that it's on, or if you're doing onboarding, you can automatically assign a structure tag, you know, that way as well. So we just need something for it to find, and we give you tons and tons of options in order to do it. So we're going to key off of those, key off of those differences, whether it's the IP address, a structure tag, a peripheral, whatever it is, we're going to find it. And then we're going to choose, where it goes. So here we're going to be using a structure tag, and we're going to then place it, on the on what's found, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to put it in, and it's going to just drop it there. One of the cool things I always like to point out is this looks kind of like a little infinity sign or something that's down here. Any of your directories, where there is a default directory rule that's that's there, you can go ahead and you can right click on it. You're going to see it's got this little icon next to it. Right click on that is going to then bring you right to that. So if something isn't working properly and you're wondering why, that's a great troubleshooting tip right there. It's going to be easy to find. So as your environment grows, you're going to have more and more of these default directory rules, based on the locations, the floor of the building. And so you don't want to be searching too much. So where is it supposed to go? You can go there, or where is it at? And you can take a look. So now all you got to do is you just got to find the device. You can right click and away you go. And now you're off and you're troubleshooting. So, and this is what it's like start to from start to finish. So we'll see what we're what we're looking for, everything else.
Yep. So this is going to be an example of putting everything together now. So this will use MDT, but it'll go through the whole process from start to finish. Here you can see that automatic registration's turned on. I have a DNS round robin set up with 2 UMS servers, default directory rules in place. You can do tons of things like Douglas just said with default directory rules. You can queue off of pretty much anything. In this case, I'm just keying my device off of a unit ID because I know what it's going to be. But you can even have default directory rules target external devices. So if last boot is via like ICG, you can have it go into an external folder and keep that stuff separate. And then if you have that apply on boot, those external devices could actually move between, external and internal device folders, depending on where it booted last. But in our web UMS here, our device, when it's done, is going to drop into this demo folder. So it'll get 12.3.2 assigned, and then as well as a couple apps. So we'll do a Pixie boot. So if you're doing Pixie through SECM, it would look pretty much exactly the same. We'll have a couple reboots kind of take place as we go through here, but you can see it's already running IGEL OS. I think I imaged this one with like 12.4.1, and then 12.4.2 is assigned in UMS, so you'll actually see it update right away too. So there you can see the automatic registration take place. And then once we kicked off Pixie in this case, there was no need to do any additional like clicking. So everything that's happening since then is just all automated. So here you can see it got the new app versions assigned. So it downloaded the new OS version, a couple apps, and then it'll reboot here.
Voila.
Yep, and there we can see our finished device. It's all updated. It downloaded the apps that we assigned, and that's it. I think it'll show the console view here too. Yep, I refreshed, and then our device popped right into the folder it was supposed to and picked up its assignments.
So what is it that they need? Most of the time, my experience has been, especially with larger customers, probably going to need a combination of 2 or 3 of these. Maybe you're going to need, there's almost always going to be a need, for the OS creator, especially, in the unattended mode, it goes really, really well. Most large corporations are going to have places, where unfortunately, they still don't have fiber. Maybe they're still seeing plenty of places, where they're running a T1 or bonded T1s, and the network infrastructure is just really old, or they have devices like I said, on fork trucks, that are running around with an IGEL, mounted right to it. And so, in the corporate office, you can almost always use SECM or SECM MECM or MDT for Pixie, and or using the client. The client is really the way to go. That is the only one that's 100% zero touch, because you're not going to have to reboot, hit F12, choose the task sequence. If it already has the SECM or MECM client on it, it will grab it, it'll pull it from cache, it'll reboot, on its scheduled time, and away it goes. In some places, maybe they just don't have the the proper infrastructure that's already there. They don't have an MDT or MECM. That UMS Pixie, it'll work. There's also the OSCW, which is now supported. So figure out what it is that's needed. But all of them, the great thing is that most of these are really easy to do. So.
Yeah, and the UMS Pixie there, as some of the other demos showed, MDT seems to be a better option, especially if you don't want to download from the internet. So there's not a lot of places where I necessarily recommend using the UMS and Pixie option that we have in the KB. It's just there's other options that are just more efficient. So yeah, in conclusion, there's multiple options to automate the installation. Just make sure, your auto registration and automatic licensing is set up, and test your default directory rules. Default directory rules are super powerful, but with, all that power comes a lot of danger too. If you just start adding default directory rules to a production environment and things aren't tested correctly, you could move devices unintentionally, and that's not a good thing. So one other thing, when we were putting the presentation together for Disrupt, the OSCW, which is the OS creator for Windows, was not currently available for OS 12. It is now, so that's also a great option. We're a little short on time, but I don't know if we have time to demo that. For anyone who's not familiar with the OSCW, it is a small agent that you install on a Windows computer, and it checks into UMS while it's still running Windows, and you can actually send a convert command to a Windows device. Does not require Pixie, so it's great for environments where SCCM is unavailable and Pixie is not an option. So you can convert Windows devices with that OSCW, and it works great. And there's even some, custom scripting. You could wrap the OSCW in a custom script. So you could have it deploy the OSCW agent, pre-deploy an OSC ISO file, and actually initialize the conversion directly from a script without having to, trigger or kick it off from within UMS.
I forgot. One thing I also like to mention with the utility that we have, the SECM plugin, it does give you the ability to to update and customize that bin file too. So if you have an environment, I've run into this. where no matter what, it's going to be required, that you have an 8021X, certificate on it. As you run through the utility to, to update that bin file, one of the things that you can do is you can put in the settings in advance and inject a certificate in advance, so it gets on the network. So I found, highly secure environments, finance, government locations. They even have to have a generic cert in order to get to the remediation VLAN or to a segmented VLAN with minimal access. So you have to have that, there in advance. So that tool will give you the ability to put those into the image file straight away, and also be able to have the settings in there so it knows where to go to get the updated individual device certificate issued to it. So very powerful tool, and it's great. So you can use that, and you can create your own custom bin file that way. So, what do we have? Any more questions, Seb?
I tried to answer most of them directly during you speaking, but I don't think so. So maybe a last chance for everyone who is listening. Any questions to our two tech experts regarding automation and automatic rollout?
I saw one from Andrew that you kind of answered, Sebastian, but I just want to add. So the question is, with automatic registration turned on, is it possible to prevent certain hardware? In that situation, I would probably use default directory rules. So anything that doesn't match your accepted devices would get moved to like a quarantine folder. And then it wouldn't get a license. But anything that is one of your approved devices could just get put into a staging folder or, move through the default directory rule chain like it normally would.
Lovely. So I would say if no other questions are raising up, I thank you both so much for your time. I know that you're extremely busy, so thank you for every minute that you spent with us on the Azure Community Meetup. We will share the recording as usual on our YouTube channel as well as on social media. So I wish you a great rest of your day, a great time in the rest of your week. And for everyone who is listening, see you soon on the Azure Community. See you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.